Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami, and in today's program we are going to take up for discussion two very important developments. The first relates to US President Joe Biden's likely skipping the India's Republic Day celebrations, and the second one relates to the visit of Pakistan's Army Chief General Syed Asim Munir to the United States of America. Let's begin with the first one. According to some media reports, US President Joe Biden will highly likely skip his participation in India's Republic Day celebrations. Now, in September, US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, had said Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had invited Mr. Biden to be the chief guest for India's Republic Day celebrations on 26th of January. Now, as per some media reports, a National Security Council spokesperson has said, let me quote that he nor the administration had any travel announcements to preview at this time, unquote. Now, this comes after the US had said it had thwarted a plot to kill Sikh leader Gurprat Want Singh Pannu on American soil. The US Justice Department had said it was charging a 52-year-old man who had worked with an Indian government employee on a plot to assassinate the New York City resident who had advocated for a Sikh sovereign state in northern India. Now, earlier we know India had extended this invitation to US President as part of its preparations to host the Quad Leaders Summit in January next year. Now, the media report suggests that this particular Quad Summit has also been postponed. As far as what is the status of the India-US relations at this point in history, again, US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, has said that US-India relations let me quote him, that to make it romantic, it is like our Facebook status for a long time. It is complicated. Now we are dating. So we'll be taking up for discussion this important aspect. What core reasons could be associated with this highly likely non-participation of US President Joe Biden in India's Republic Day celebrations? What sort of an impact it would have on the overall trajectory of the bilateral relationship between India and the US, and what sort of effect it would have on the overall functioning of Quad? And is it the time for the Indian authorities to learn a lesson, feel the heat after this likely postponement by US President, and not only cooperate with the authorities in the Western countries where its officials and also the agents have been found not only in murders but also in assassination attempts? And would the Indian authorities be rectifying their approach and behavior in times to come? To understand that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Farah. She is a foreign affairs expert joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for your time, for being with us. We really appreciate that. Also on Skype at the same time, we are being joined by Dr. Jamil Khan. He is former ambassador. Dr. Khan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin with you, Dr. Naz. Now, what core reasons come to your mind straight away with this particular likelihood that US President Joe Biden is not going to participate as the chief guest in India's Republic Day celebrations?
Thank you very much for having me on your show. If I look at the President Biden's visit to India at this point in time, where we can see there is a very heated conflict taking place in the Middle East, that is the Israel attacking Gaza. And in that context, the Indian Independence Day, it's a completely different ball game. But the Quad meeting that was set to be held here on the 27th of January was of greatest significance. So if President Biden was coming, it could be the continuation of his attending the Quad meeting as well, which got postponed. Because initially India was throwing sort of tantrums that it may not host the Quad meeting this time, but now suddenly they were supposed to be hosting it as well. So that also got postponed. If, as an analyst, if I look into how it's going to affect the relationship between India and the United States, I think United States also want to tell India that if you are not doing things according to my dictation and my jurisdiction, this is what I can do with you. I can just push you aside.
What do you think is the primary reason? What exactly the US wants India to do?
Yes, the killing of the American national over there, And there was recently the Five Eyes meeting conducted in the United States as well, where they have declared the involvement of India in that killing as well. So of course they are upset with that. Of course they are upset with their strategic ally, which they are very proud of to have it here in this region, and they are supporting them with anything and everything they could in their capacity. In return, if India is manipulating with on their soil, they cannot tolerate that. As we cannot tolerate Afghan soil used against Pakistan, they also cannot tolerate that the Indians are using American soil against them or their people. They are not going to let it happen. And this is just the beginning which is popping up to them. They are aware of the seeds of radicalization of Hindutva in the society as well, and the role of Hindutva into their systems and institutions as well. So they want to put pressure on India. They behave yourself.
Right. Let me bring in Ambassador Jamil Khan also into the discussion. Ambassador Khan, and now what's your understanding? What core immediate reason do you think is associated with this particular non-participation of US President in the India's Republic Day celebrations? Dr. Khan, unfortunately we can't hear you. If you kindly unmute yourself.
The core reason for declining the attendance of the parade for the 27th of January, the Republican Day parade, the core reason is basically the one which you just mentioned, Gurbotan Singh attempted assassination. And it had already started smearing so much of tension. Anthony Blinken is on record about once this incident happened, the attempted assassination. He had publicly and officially conveyed it to the Indians that it's a very serious matter and they would like India to participate in its investigation. But India was still trying to avoid as much as possible, not participating fully in it. So that is a core reason, but there are multiple reasons that the Biden had to cancel his visit to India. And there could be many excuses, quad excuse, and there could be other excuses of rescheduling problem. The United States always, they plan way ahead. In fact, in May, they started talking about this Joe Biden's visit to India on their Republican Day parade. And then in September, it was formally announced. So all of a sudden, if it's canceled, it's not canceled for some different reason to my mind, because diplomatically they can't admit what is the reason, and they should not, as a matter of fact. But basically, that is one sparking point. What are the other multiple reasons? Biden is losing its popularity, and the election is knocking the door next year. So Biden would not have been seen that that a U.S. national who was who was attempted to be assassinated by an Indian, backed by an Indian intelligence officer, which was all investigated and now indicted in the New York court. So after that, the public opinion would have been different if had. Gaza basically has already brought down the popularity of Biden. Now, added on that was this one, but the story doesn't end there. The story is that the Religious Freedom Report, by its own Commission of United States, that had also alleged India of its human right violation, and that had also alleged India about the religious polarization, and that had also alleged India about the promulgation of 2019 Citizenship Act. That had also blamed India. I'm talking about the report to halt, and they had asked, basically, the European Parliament had asked Indians to halt the atrocities and the on ethnic and religious violence, to halt that in Manipur also. So all these multiple reasons, they were already piling up. And once this yesterday's indictment in the court, and after that, if Biden had continued with this visit, probably it would have further really brought down his popularity, and his election would have been impacted and affected. So that seems to be main points and main causes. But let's examine few more points if you want. It definitely is a very awkward time for the United States relations, and for the reasons which I just mentioned to you. The celebration on 27th and the Quad meeting, well, they were on the agenda, but the postponement of it is just an excuse. The rescheduling is just an excuse. So, because it was already marked and lamented, marked and graded as a very serious thing. And mind you, any sovereign country, if this kind of a transnational terrorism act is committed, it comes under the ambit and it attracts United Nations Charter also in the relations between the countries and between the state. John Kirby is also on record, and in which he had called this
Right.
attempted assassination as a very serious incident in the soil. And by the way, that was followed by Justin Trudeau's statement in the parliament, and it was the evidence was five eyes. The chiefly
Right.
the U.S. intelligence had given off. So
Uh,
these are the multiple reasons which
Right,
entailed.
Dr. Jamil Khan, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you for your further views regarding other aspects of this particular bilateral relationship between India and the United States. Dr. Naz, now, as Dr. Jamil Khan has mentioned, that Joe Biden is also losing popularity back there in the homeland. How do you see that?
Well, I think there is logic in that President Joe Biden is losing his strength among his own people, and this is due to the polarization in the United States of America, where the current government under President Joe Biden does not care about human rights. It doesn't care about minorities, and I tend to disagree with our speaker that maybe it's the violation of the minority rights or human rights issue that President Biden has suspended his visit to India. I do not believe that they care about human rights. They have completely invalidated the status of United Nations when it comes to human rights, where the Secretary General himself is saying that the United Nations Security Council has been hijacked by all these veto member states. So do they care about human rights? No, they do not. It's a new
We
world
have seen,
system.
the thing which has been mentioned by Ambassador also, that there were multiple reports by the United States International Commission on International Religious Freedom asking the State Department to enlist India as a country of particular concern, which the State Department didn't do. So it is a bipartisan body over there.
It is,
so there is a concern on one side, but that hasn't been taken very seriously when it comes to the authorities putting India's name in the countries of particular concern.
Because they want to keep India as one of their strongest strategic ally, but they also want to tell them by cutting them to size that if you do not go according to the way we want you to go, this is what we will do with you.
Do you see any sort of a difference when it comes to India's response when it was the case of Canada?
There was complete silence.
There was a very strong reaction by the Indian authorities when the allegations were made by the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. This time around, when this particular assassination plot has been unveiled and thwarted by the US authorities, now we see that India says that it has gone already into investigation. So is there any difference in the two cases that you analyze?
I think there is a huge discrepancy between the two of them, the way India responded to the initial one and the later stages as well. Probably they were trying to be, when it was Justin Trudeau bringing it up, they thought like they would put pressure on Justin Trudeau because they have America at their back. But this time with Five Eyes, and according to the Five Eyes reports, if they are demanding India to be held accountable for the assassination or the plot or the killing and all, they are like a bit scared now that what's going to happen, because if America gets upset with them, what will be their status in the international system?
So the United States of America upset already? Because
of course it is upset.
Antony Blinken, at that particular time when the allegations were made by Mr. Justin Trudeau,
they were
urged
upset.
India to cooperate in the investigation with the Canadian authorities also, because the murder was actually committed
It was taken
on
place there.
And now, this was just a assassination plot that was thwarted. So actually no murder happened on the American soil, but it took place on the Canadian soil.
But it's a continuation of the same kind of strategy that they were having when it happens in Canada, and now this was the plot that they were planning to have it even in the United States. And this is what we have been referring to, that it's just the beginning, because the rhetoric of the Hindutva is strongly embedded there into their institutions and into their society as well. They know when, where and how to play it out. So probably through the intelligence sharing and the discussions and through the reports and all,
so right, should we be considering this non-participation of US President Joe Biden in this Indian Republic Day celebration as a setback to the...
It is a big setback. And I think the election is there in India as well. So it's an election phase for both of them, and it's a very crucial time. In this crucial time, if America is stepping back or showing some or throwing some tantrums towards India, it's not in the best interest of Prime Minister Modi. And for Biden, I think now he has to regain his strength among his own people, where he has been badly criticized. He has to justify his people that, look, if something is going to happen against you, I can still stand for you. So he has to win the hearts in the United States one way or the other. For that, such kind of actions were really necessary, by telling the other party, by showing it to his own people, that I will stand with you no matter what happens, irrespective of how strongly I support India. But if something is going to be plotted against you, I will go to any extent, even if it's at the cost of diplomatic relations between. Though I don't see that the diplomatic relations between the two is going to be affected. If you have seen the latest report that has been issued, the national security one, towards Pakistan, even there is a strong mention of that the Pakistan military capability is not going to be used against the allies in the region as well. So who is the strongest ally in the region that is aligned with the United States agenda and objectives? That's India. So they do care about India, but they do have to tell India that be in your limits. If you go out of the limits, we know how to deal with it.
Point well taken. How do you think is it appropriate when the US ambassador to India forms an analogy of a romantic relationship just on the on the lines of a Facebook status? It was complicated. Now we are dating. On one side, we see there is political motivation into murders and assassination attempts on the foreign soils. So do you think this analogy is appropriate to make?
Well, this analogy altogether, speaking about two countries, India being regionally a stronger country and United States being the superpower of the world, and talking about it, this is not the right way to talk about two countries' diplomatic relationship, because there is certain decency, the elements of decency needs to be maintained when it comes to diplomatic relations between the two countries. That's not the right way to do it. But India is very good at, telling stories, making stories. They are good at social media promotion, projection, data manipulation. They are very active on that front. So probably it was a stunt that they thought it will be sold out very well among the society and the people, but it's not a very well taken idea, a notion that they were probably projecting that it will bring fruits to them. I don't see it is going to be going in the right direction.
So one last question from you. Where do you see when we understand there are elections around the corner in both the largest democracies of the world, where do you see the trajectory heading when it comes to the bilateral relationship between these two countries in the coming months in particular?
I think both of them needs one another. India needs America to be strongly positioning itself in the region, and United States need India to have a strongest ally in this part of the world, where it can use that ally against other countries if required and need by. So the relationship, I don't see is going towards something bizarre or awkward position. I don't see it happening, because they have larger objectives, and it's part and parcel of their national security policies that they have to be at the back of India, come what may. But the thing is, they have to be very clear on the terms and conditions, because elections are there. They need votes. They need the electoral system to be fully in place and working in that context. So for that, they have to win the hearts of the people. So winning the hearts of the people, probably Joe Biden is doing the right way, and Modi has to work harder to win the hearts of his people, to get the votes and get re-elected. Dr.
Farah, foreign affairs expert, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Jamil Khan, now, do you also consider it a huge setback for the Indian authorities? And if yes, do you think they are going to feel the heat of it and at least cooperate with the Western authorities when it comes to the investigations, particularly of that murder that took place on the Canadian soil, and now that assassination attempt for a murder on the American soil?
Well, India would like to still push it under the carpet, but then the Western countries, they would not have the appetite to digest it, basically. Transnational terrorism, it cannot be tolerated by the Western countries. They, regardless of their bilateral relation, it's true that it's going to cause a little embarrassment and a small dent in the diplomatic relations, but it's not going to really brush aside their diplomatic relations because they have a larger agenda. And as I said, that Biden probably would not have even bothered much about all these reports and the indictment of the Indian citizen because of their bilateral relation and because of their overall geopolitical interest in India. They have invested a lot. What I was mentioning a little while ago is that 5 points which I mentioned, they are multi-layered reasons, but if you quantify those reasons, those quantification percentage wise would be very few percentage, but the actual flashpoint was this the attempted assassination of a Sikh leader. But coming back on that, yes, this would cause a little dent. Yes, India has to cooperate, but India would be the last country to admit that they were committed or they were involved in transnational terrorism because that would then largely give more leeway to the Sikh movement. And therefore, it's a dilemma for India. But having said so, the United States has a very strong defense agreement with India, logistic agreement in India, the containment policy of United States. It all revolves and it's very pivotal so far as Indian relation is concerned. So having that in mind, I think post-election, Biden lost the popularity. It has gone down to 40%. So Biden would not like to lose it any further. And as I said, that Gaza was is in one factor and a very important factor. The other one is the one which is this indictment. So these two factors could have even further brought her popularity, and he cannot afford it. So therefore, this time they have taken this decision. But subsequently, in my analysis, unless the world community really propel it and project this transnational terrorism in its appropriate way, in fact, some of the countries should even take it to the United Nations. In that case, it will be very hard for the United States to maintain the same trajectory of relations with India. Otherwise, the United Nations, because of their own strategic strategic benefit and strategic goals, they would like to really resume that relation with India.
Right. Dr. Khan, your point is well taken. I'll come back to you to take your understanding regarding the kind of statement that has come forth by the U.S. ambassador to India regarding the bilateral relationship between U.S. and India. For now, we are joined by another participant, Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja, Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, joining us on the phone line. Dr. Khawaja, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. What core reasons do you associate with this non-participation of U.S. President Joe Biden in India's Republic Day celebrations, and do you consider it a huge setback for the Indian authorities? And where do you see the future trajectory of this bilateral relationship after this particular non-participation?
This is an important question which we need to chalk out and try to find the answer. Because states or nations like USA, when they take such decisions, the decisions are not for short-term gains, but long-term gains. Moreover, such decisions also somehow strategic signaling to the concerned states. So I think with this move, USA try to show solidarity with Canada and also to cut down India's false image of self, to cut down them to size. Because as in Chanakya Kautilya, the famous philosopher, he wrote that overconfidence is sign of weakness. And when we see that how India under Modi and Ajit Doval had this false sense of security which they want to achieve through aggression. So their sense of security is classic and realist, hard, and they thought that by advancing the killing spree in Western countries, that would be beneficial for them, and that would reduce the immediate threat to Indian interests. But they forgot that in terms of eradicating those immediate threats through illegal means, they would give birth, they would instigate, would accelerate their the damage to their long-term interests, and those are their bilateral relations with the Western powers. And we have seen this in case of India, in case of Canada, in case of USA, that how those countries responded. Both responded differently, but this cancellation of US President Biden's visit to India is a signal to India that they should not consider West as a soft target, or as insignificant as right now, under the false image of development and strength, the
Right, Dr.
policymakers in
Khawaja, your
India
point
are
is well taken.
thinking
Do
of
you
themselves.
foresee any sort of a rectification on the part of Indian authorities in terms of their approach and behavior when it comes to dealing with the Western powers in particular?
As we know, the domestic politics in India is one of the most important foreign and defense policy determinants. Uh, so therefore, with the idea of the forthcoming elections in India in 2024, I cannot see any change, any prospective change in India's behavior and aggressive posturing towards the world, because this posturing and this behavior, which is considered as macho in South Asian context, that brings more vote, more support for the BJP regime. I read somewhere that even Israel, a country like Israel, even they did not conduct any killing operations in the friendly countries. So India is an exception which is operating and targeting its so-called threats in the friendly countries, while questioning, undermining the law and order situation in those countries.
Right.
So this is the difference. And Indian policymakers, while formulating this strategy, were unable to calculate the consequences of this. And Biden's cancellation of Biden's visit is one of the is one of the indicator. And I see that in domestic politics as well, the opposition in India would also utilize this cancellation in order to convince public that this is the Moody's position right now in international politics.
Right,
I
your
was
point is
recently,
well
few hours
taken.
back,
Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja, Executive Director at Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Ambassador Khan, coming back to you now, how do you analyze this particular analogy that has been built by US Ambassador to India? If you allow me, let me quote him. He has equated it. Do we understand that he is trying to equate that bilateral relationship, which has been affected by the politically motivated assassination attempts, to a romantic relationship with its status on the Facebook, and saying it is complicated and we are dating? How do you think is it appropriate to give such an analogy to a bilateral relationship like this?
It's slightly, I think, higher tone than what it could have been done. But then the crux of the matter he has conveyed, the US ambassador to India is conveyed. But at the same time, any ambassador resident in a particular country, if the head of state of that ambassador is visiting the country of his residence, country of accreditation, in this case, the US ambassador to India, that is by itself a big setback to the mission of that particular country. So yes, so far as the remark is concerned, that is in line with what is the temperament of the United States at this point in time. and what the public in United States, they want to listen and they want to really absorb. So from that standpoint, yes. But from the standpoint that the program, that the visit was cancelled, because during the visit of head of the government or head of state, the ambassadors make the best use of the bilateral relations, and the ambassador exploit that occasion to the extent of getting maximum MOU signed and maximum agreement signed,
Right.
and maximum trade agreement and maximum defense agreement. So those that advantage has really diminished because of this setback, which was the attempted
Right, Dr. Khan. Now,
assassination.
one last question from you. Now, when we all know that this Quad summit has also been postponed, do you think the souring of relationship between the two countries of a particular forum, and in this particular case, on the functioning of Quad as overall, it's going to have a serious impact on that one also?
Quad relations, I think, for the time being, because the Biden was the key factor in the Quad summit and Quad meeting. Since he declined, pretendably, or at least at the back of the mind of those diplomats who had advised the White House that this could be postponed or this could be cancelled. I think under that backdrop, we cannot say that Quad would lose its importance. The Quad would continue to have its importance, because United States definitely need to have its very strong footprint here, and that could only be possible if the Quad members, they remain galvanized with each other. And the leadership of Quad, basically the two main pair, one is the United States, and second one is India in this. And India, although does not really play a direct role in the AUKUS, but still India has its very significant role in the overall goals and missions of AUKUS, as well, by supporting through the Quads to all the member countries. So yes, Quad is affected for the time being, but I think they are going to resume it because of the foreign policy of the United States, that is the containment of China. So that becomes their requirement. The Quad, the AUKUS, the string of pearls, and the string of alliance, string of pearls is that of China, but a string of alliance, and all the six agreements, which is of a very significant nature so far as defense relation is concerned with India and United States. So all this is directed in the overall perspective of the geopolitical context. And the geopolitical context was the Middle East, and Gaza is already heating up. The United States would not like that its investment in India is impacted and affected for the time being. It's election season. It's a time of election, season of election in the United States. So once that election is over, and any new government, they would like to pursue and follow their foreign policy, and that is the containment of China. And again, India would then gain the significance. Otherwise, India, if that had to take any lesson, then there were about six reports of the United States and the European Union. And European Union report was very harsh, very clearly asking India to halt the ethnic and religious violence in its country. That was one. And secondly, the Human Rights Commission report, two Human Rights Commission reports with regard to Kashmir. Even those reports have nothing but all the human rights violation and the violation of the international law in terms of what India is doing in Kashmir and what India is doing in the main state, in the main territory of India. So if they had to take some impact and effect, they could have taken it. Probably they thought that because of this geopolitical significance and importance in the eyes of the United States, they probably thought that they will get away with this. But as I said, it's an election year. As I said,
But
this is in the public
unfortunately
eye.
for India, that doesn't seems to be happening that way. Dr. Jamil Khan, from Ambassador, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Now let's talk about the very significant visit of the Chief of Army Staff, General Syed Asim Munir, to the United States of America. Let me quote ISPR, what ISPR the military's media wing has said that the Chief of Army Staff left for the United States of America on an official visit. This is General Syed Asimani's first visit to USA as COAS. ISPR says during this visit, General Syed Asimani is scheduled to meet the senior military and other government officials of the United States of America. Also, we have seen recently very important engagements when it comes to the US officials with Pakistani authorities. So we'll try to take an understanding about the significance of this particular visit of the Chief of Army Staff to the United States of America, and what does it basically depict about the overall trajectory of the bilateral relationship between Pakistan and the United States. Let me bring in our panelists to discuss this. We are honored to have been joined by Brigadier retired Shahid Jagir. He's defense analyst on the phone line. Brigadier Jagir, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. First and foremost, how significant do you think this particular visit of the Chief of Army Staff to the United States of America is?
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, I would say that in the present geopolitical and regional environment, the visit of the CISS is extremely crucial. And this will not only help us to address the bilateral relation with the United States, but also our core interest, conveying of the core interest to the U.S. And our foreign policy red lines, which are very, very important to be addressed at this time, because Pakistan is facing an economic challenge, a challenge from the TPP, which are launching time and again the attacks on Pakistan, the Kashmir issue, the issues which are affecting the Western Asia, that is the Arab world. So I think the first and the foremost thing which the CISS would like to discuss about Pakistan is that how we can move forward in the present environment. As we all know that the United States State Department has again reiterated that Pakistan is a non-NATO ally and a very important country for the United States. But having said that, it is important that our core national interests should converge. And to address that, U.S. can help a lot to get Pakistan out of the economic problems, as it has big stakes in the World Bank, the IMF, and other big financial institutions. It can help to address our energy needs. It can help to address our with the development. It can also help us in education, because we have young population of 60%. So education from USA it will be a great dividend for Pakistan. Right. The second thing which is important is that the Afghanistan, as per the Doha agreement, it was agreed that the Afghanistan land will not be used by the terrorists for exporting the terrorism. But we have seen in the recent past that TPP has been given a free hand by the Taliban. And today morning also, a big chunk of ammunition, American weapons and ammunition have been seized at Durrani border, which is a point of great concern for Pakistan. In the Senate, the U.S. the Pentagon has accepted that 7.2 million, worth of 7.2 million ammunition, weapons, and other things have been left in Afghanistan. Now, if these all fall into the hands of the TPP, Daesh, and other organizations, the core organizations emanating the terrorism in the region. So it will have a very bad effect on the regional stability.
Right, Brigadier Jagir, you mentioned a very pertinent and important point over here. The leftover after the international troops withdrawal of those weapons of the sophisticated nature back in Afghanistan. What practical measures should ideally the United States authorities in this regard at this particular moment can take?
The United States had signed an agreement with the Taliban in Doha, in which it said that Afghanistan will not allow its land to be to export to terrorism. So one is that it should pursue with the Taliban that all that ammunition, weapons, and night vision devices, laser things, which should be confiscated by Taliban from these organizations, especially. Second, although the Taliban have launched a campaign for giving the license to the people, but still it is very, very difficult to implement it immediately. Third, the thing is that Taliban have, despite our time and again saying this thing that the TPP and other anti-Pakistani organizations must be reined. The Afghan Taliban have not been able to fully come up to the commitment. So U.S. can also help build the capacity of the Taliban in this regard. One. Second is that enforce the pressure that this does not go unchecked, as I have already said. So you see the attack the day before yesterday has martyred 34 soldiers of Pakistan Army, which is of grave concern to Pakistan. And the third thing, important thing, is that the repatriation of Taliban back to Afghanistan. That is very important. We are not saying that the Taliban, which are legally allowed to come to Pakistan, any foreign national which is living illegally, and especially the Taliban, the Afghans, which are connected with these terrorist attacks, must go back. As far as coming on the media, the report of 2,500 people, which are the American assets logged in Pakistan, waiting for the American visa for settlement, they must be expedited. They must go either to Afghanistan or to U.S. as per the commitment of the U.S. And the U.S. must financially help Pakistan till the time they are being harbored in Pakistan with the complete checks. The next important, very important.
Unfortunately, we're short of time. Two more questions. One that relates to this, as you already mentioned, that regarding those weapons which have been left back in Afghanistan after the international troops withdrawal, it's the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban to go and confiscate those weapons and also fulfill their commitment as per the Doha Agreement to not allow any terrorist outfit to operate from the Afghanistan soil. So if they are unable to carry out any concrete measure on both of these fronts, what possible options do you think Pakistan and the United States of America can collectively have afterwards?
Pakistan, United States and Pakistan can, if we join hands together, first of all, it will be a great pressure on Taliban to do what they want to achieve. The second important thing is that if they claim of the capacity building, United States can help them in the capacity building. of their law enforcement agencies to confiscate these weapons, especially from the TPP and other organizations. Then there is very important thing.
Jagir, again, the thing that you already mentioned regarding the Kashmir issue, we have seen the Indian Apex Court giving the verdict regarding as to the status of IIOJK. What exactly do you think happens to the responsibility of the United States when it comes to the status of IIOJK being the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council?
Being the leading organization and still the superpower, it is the moral duty of U.S. to uphold the United Nations resolution on Kashmir. One, that is, it can only do if it pressurizes India by to adhere to the United Council resolution, hold a plebiscite over there, and fulfill the wishes of the Kashmiri people. Second thing, which is very important, is that these people, what we were talking before, that these organizations.
Right, your point is well taken. Brigadier retired Shahid Jagir, defense analyst, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.